What a miserable creature rotting before our eyes. A meltdown throughout the last 24 hours like no other. Did you see Donald Trump at that GOP retreat he held at the Kennedy Center that he vandalized and calls the Trump Kennedy Center unlawfully? Did you see what he looked like? He was doing this weird thing with his hands and making strange noises. I mean, look at his face there, the bronze-looking face, the weird gestures. I'll show you how international news was reporting on this, where they had to translate what he was saying when he was going, What an utter humiliation. Then last night, Donald Trump takes to social media to post the following. I'm pleased to announce that the interim authorities in Venezuela will be turning over between 30 and 50 million barrels of high-quality sanctioned oil to the United States of America. This oil will be sold at its market price, and that money will be controlled by me as the President of the United States to ensure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States. I have asked Energy Secretary Chris Wright to execute this plan immediately. It will be taken by storage ships and brought directly to unloading docks in the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter! Exclamation point. Now, you don't have the authority to control this money. Let's be very clear. Although MAGA Mike Johnson and the MAGA Republicans in the Senate don't give a crap about what their role is. Also, 30 to 50 million barrels is about a day and a half to 2 days of oil. And it's valued at about, $2 to $3 billion. And who are you coordinating this with? Because all the latest reporting from the oil industry is that they have no clue what you are talking about. And they don't want to make the capital expenditures in Venezuela. They say they don't need to make the capital expenditures. So who in the world are you actually even talking to right now? As Anna Kramer from Notice writes, since Saturday, I've been trying to understand how the U.S. oil industry actually benefits from the Maduro ouster. Where I've landed, the experts are confused. The industry itself is a bit baffled. Trump is out on a limb on this one. And if you understand the type of sticky oil that exists in Venezuela and how it then needs to be refined, and the fact that you probably need to invest about $100 billion in Venezuela. Most oil companies, the big, beautiful oil companies that Donald Trump talks about, don't want to make those capital expenditures. So that's why Donald Trump's been floating now, right away, by the way, that the taxpayers will subsidize the oil companies to the tune of $100 billion. So while Donald Trump has ripped away your health care, refused to extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies, Donald Trump's plan is to make the taxpayers pay $100 billion to fund oil companies going into Venezuela, because otherwise they'll lose money. And at the same time, Donald Trump gave, $40 to $50 billion to Argentina, or even more. And then Donald Trump just announced, did you hear this, in the past 24 hours, that he would be revoking $10 billion in child care services for blue states like New York, California, Minnesota, Colorado, and others. Child care services. Isn't it a common theme with this regime that they use children as pawns? That the first group of people that they always seem to want to attack are the children, starve the children, remove the child care services, cover up the Epstein files. Speaking of which, even the QAnon shaman no longer supports Donald Trump. Yes, folks, the QAnon shaman says, I've moved on. When you are in MAGA and you lose QAnon shaman, that's saying something. Take a look at QAnon shaman right here. Play this clip.
Still a Trump supporter?
No. I thought you knew that.
Why not?
The man alone refusing to release the Epstein client list was enough for me, and I think a lot of other people, to be like, okay, this is bullshit.
Then I mentioned earlier how international media is covering Donald Trump's maniac press conference, retreat, whatever the hell you want to call that thing before the GOP yesterday. Take a look at how foreign press had to cover this while Donald Trump was moaning and making weirdo sounds. Play this clip.
خیلی با وزنه برداری فرق میکنه. ببینید من میخوام بیشتر از این بگم ولی حالا نداره، بقیه دارن تماشا میکنن، دوست دارم اینجوری یه ذره اینجا بخواد این وزنه بلند کن روی میله.
So yesterday, Donald Trump's White House official rapid response account was doing some interesting, weird, despicable, disgusting, traitorous, treasonous things. On the rapid response account, they were doing AI videos of Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, and they were saying, he's very stupid, he's low IQ, he's Tampon Tim's daycare. I just want to highlight this because this is not normal adult behavior by Donald Trump and these MAGA Republicans. The level of immaturity, the level of just disgustingness. I mean, just who behaves like this? Tampon Tim's daycare, like y'all think that's like funny, and who like goes, oh, ho, 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 very funny, Donald. So they were doing that. Then on the official White House account, as you know, we reported yesterday, and I'm sure you heard, the White House gave its own fake, false disinfo timeline of January 6th, and they blamed January 6th on the Capitol Police officers. So while the Capitol Police officers were testifying during shadow hearings led by the Democrats that MAGA Republicans refused to participate in, the MAGA Republicans refused to put up the plaque that under a law is required to memorialize January 6th and the courage of the officers on January 6th. MAGA Republicans refused to hang up the freaking plaque, okay? And they're just supporting Donald Trump's lies about January 6th. This is how Donald Trump refers to the timeline of what went down on January 6th. Capitol Police response escalates tensions. Capitol Police aggressively fire tear gas, flashbangs, and rubber munitions into crowds of peaceful protesters, injuring many and deliberately escalating tensions. And then Donald Trump says at 2:24, Trump urges calm. This is on the official White House website. How gross. How Putin-esque is this? I mean, we all saw what happened on January 6th. And just be clear, if Donald Trump is willing to lie about this, he lies about everything. He's the only person to use oil as a way to cover up what his true intentions are of invading Venezuela, which is likely to hide the Epstein files and to further the cover-up of the Epstein files. The first time in history, he admits that the reason was oil, but that was the cover-up for the Epstein files distraction. So Trump says at 2:24, as events unfold, Donald Trump calls for peace, tweeting support for law enforcement, and releasing a video saying, go home in peace. Really? Because on January 6, 2024, at January 6th at 2:24 p.m., this was Donald Trump's post. Mike Pence did not have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked previously to certify. USA demands the truth. That's what he was posting. Now, going back to Venezuela for a moment as well, the Maduro regime successor, Delcy Rodriguez, who's now in charge, who's an authoritarian. The Maduro successor regime, authoritarians, by the way, who are also still aligned with Iran and Russia and China, they are now engaging in a wave of repression against anybody who challenges the regime. So Here's the Washington Post headline: Fear grips Caracas as new wave of repression is unleashed in Venezuela. Residents describe being pulled over, questioned, and forced to hand over their phones. Armed men scroll through their messages and social media, looking for anything that could be construed as support for the U.S. raid. Venezuela's government launched a far-reaching crackdown after Maduro's ouster, detaining journalists and civilians and sending armed gangs to the streets. You basically have paramilitary roaming the streets of Venezuela right now, and if there's any dissent against the current regime, they are being disappeared. This is what the Trump regime is doing. Here's what we're learning as well. There was also large crowds showing support for Maduro and Delcy Rodriguez. Now, they're probably terrified in Venezuela over everything that's happening right now, and perhaps they thought for a moment that there could be democracy there, but Donald Trump squashed that and propped up Maduro's successor. It would be like if Donald Trump was ousted and then J.D. Vance became the president. That's what it's like to get rid of Maduro and bring in Delcy Rodriguez. So you have all of these like Donald Trump and all these MAGAs are like, the people in Venezuela are cheering for democracy. They're cheering that they're free. No, they're not. That's not what's happening in Venezuela. What's happening in Venezuela is you have paramilitary and secret police repressing people, going through their phones, disappearing people who show support for the United States. And then you have pro-Maduro protests taking place inside Venezuela. Now, again, they're probably terrified, which is why they're doing these pro-Maduro protests. But there are massive pro-Maduro and pro-government and pro-regime protests right there. Here's how it's being reported by the Times. A large crowd supporting the ousted President Maduro marched through the streets of Caracas on Tuesday, demanding his release from American jail. While Venezuela's interim leader, Delcy Rodriguez, made it clear the regime he put in place remained in power. She said, "The government of Venezuela runs our country, no one else. There is no external agent governing Venezuela," directly contradicting Trump. There appeared to be a few thousand people marching, but it was not possible to verify the amount. You see the people here, showing the B-roll right here of the people at the protest. At the same time, the Venezuelan government was exerting its control of the country with reports of checkpoints, searches of citizens' phones, detentions of journalists, and the arrest of at least 2 people celebrating Mr. Maduro's capture. There were virtually no signs of opposition on the streets. The so-called colectivos, or armed government militias, were out in full force on the streets of the capital in recent days, and some citizens said they had been interrogating people and searching their phones for signs of support of the U.S. attack. We also learned that at least 75 individuals were killed during the United States raid or invasion of Venezuela. Most of them were Cubans who were guarding Maduro, but others were killed as well. At least 75 deaths, 7 American soldiers were injured. And while all of that's going on, you have Caroline Leavitt, Trump's chief propagandist here, putting out the following statement regarding Greenland. The White House yesterday put out those lies about J6. They put out AI videos of Tim Walz saying tampon Tim. And they put out this statement right here. President Trump has made it well known that acquiring Greenland is a national security priority of the United States, and it's vital to deter our adversaries in the Arctic region. The president and his team are discussing a range of options to pursue this important foreign policy goal. And of course, utilizing the U.S. military is always an option at the commander-in-chief's disposal. Again, threatening war in very obvious terms against Greenland. This as Denmark, since Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Denmark held confidential emergency parliament meetings yesterday to prepare for possible U.S. invasion of Greenland. The Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, met with the Prime Minister of Greenland, Mette Frederiksen, in order to show support for the sovereignty there. But this is what the Trump regime is doing. Now, finally, what this is also about is covering up the Epstein files. We now have a DC bureau at the MeidasTouch Network. And if you want to support the growth of our DC bureau, go to MeidasPlus.com and subscribe to our Substack, by the way, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. But go to MeidasPlus.com, become a subscriber there. That's one of the ways we've been able to grow this independent media platform. But a guy by the name of Pablo Manriquez has joined the MeidasTouch Network, and he interviewed Thomas Massie, Republican, who was the leader of that discharge petition to release the Epstein files, with Ro Khanna. They did it on a bipartisan basis. And here's what Massie told our reporter on the Hill, Pablo Manriquez. Let's play it.
For the fact that these Epstein files still, there are millions of more documents that they're still reviewing at this point.
You know, if this were a private law firm with 5% of the resources of the DOJ, this would have been done by the deadline. And they just missed another deadline, which is the report to Congress, which is supposed to list all of the politicians that are in their files. And also, they're supposed to justify all the redactions 15 days after the first 30-day window. But the biggest problem isn't that they're missing the deadlines, it's what they're redacting. So they're citing the Privacy Act, and they're trying to pretend like that overrides a law that we just passed that says you can't withhold records to prevent embarrassment. They're also citing FOIA standards, which don't apply to our law when they're trying to say that they don't have to release internal decisions. But our bill specifically says release internal decisions.
So what are you going to do about it?
We're looking at that.
Well, there you have it, folks. Let me know what you think about all of this. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million. We appreciate you so much.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.